So today we're going to look a little bit at how God uses cracked pots like us to make a difference in the world, to explore indeed how we can be part of this planting seeds of love. I mentioned today where the message is titled So What, and one of the reasons why it's titled So What is because we will be planting immediately following this service over at Eskenazi on Michigan Road, just south of 71st Street. And you are welcome to join us there today to plant those 15 beds. We're looking forward to it. Bev and Mary have done quite a bit of work to ensure that we're ready to rock and roll. And it's going to be a fun day had by all. We have a text today that we're going to look at. It's from Matthew's Gospel. It's the 13th chapter. And it's kind of an interesting text. Let's go ahead and take a look at it. It's, what do you make of this? A farmer planted seed. As he scattered the seed, some of it fell on the road, and the birds ate it up. Some fell in the gravel. It sprouted quickly, but didn't put down roots, so when the sun came up, it withered just as quickly. Some fell in the weeds. As it came up, it was strangled by the weeds. Some fell on good earth and produced a harvest beyond his wildest dreams. In the past, you may have heard that text in such a way where we are told or encouraged to be mindful of where we're sowing our seeds. But we here at the garden are a little unconventional. We're going to explore something maybe a little different today. Do me a favor and look up here and meet my good friend Ruth Stout. Yes, she is drinking in a documentary that PBS did about her a number of years ago. She was born in 1884 and she died at the age of 96. As a young woman, Ruth took up gardening. And at first, she was very conventional with her gardening. Her rows were very even. She called the plowman every year, and the plowman came in, and then she planted the rows and put the seeds in appropriately and marked each row appropriately. And she did this for a few years and had some results. But in around about 1944, she kind of got tired of waiting for the plowmen to come and working on other people's schedules, and she really got tired of these rows. In fact, she said she believed rows looked like something naked that needed to be covered up. She had been mulching or creating hay mulch for years and years, and so this particular year, she decided to take all of her seed and just throw it out into the place that had been the garden. Just throwing her seed out there. And then she took hay and covered the seed with hay and thought, well, let's see what happens. Well, this is what Ruth's garden ended up looking like. Kind of this wonderful mishmash of plants that took off. Not only that, but soon Ruth Stout began to be known throughout the community as the mulch gardener. In fact, she is known as the grandmother of the mulch gardening movement. Not only did Ruth go ahead and start this on her own land, but then she began speaking at different places and sharing in different experiences about her mulch gardening. And it always involved, if it's hard, then you're doing it wrong. She was all about letting the seed and God do the work underneath all of that mulch or hay. Ruth wrote a number of books after she was known as the Queen of Mulch Gardening. One was How to Have a Green Thumb Without an Aching Back, Gardening Without Work for the Aging, the Busy, and the Indolent, Ruth Stout's No Work Garden Book, and not long before her death, I've Always Done It My Way. I'm telling you what, if the garden had a patron saint, it would have to be Ruth Stout. And in fact, I'm going to recommend that Ruth Stout become the patron saint of the garden. Because Ruth Stout didn't do things conventionally, wanted to try things her own way, and was willing to do what it took to have a garden grow. This text I read earlier, as I mentioned, has sometimes been used as kind of not an abundance thing, but be careful with your seed. Be careful how you use your seed. Be careful what you do. But remember, we at the garden don't always look at things conventionally. And today I'm going to recommend that I think what Jesus is saying is get out there and sow some seed. Get out there and sow seed. I don't care if it's in the weeds. I don't care if it's in the gravel. I don't care if it's in the good earth. Just get out there and sow those seeds of love and see what sticks. See what works. See what happens. I think at the heart of Jesus' message, that's what it's about. Jesus would not be so exclusive to say it was only going to happen in certain places. I think he'd say, get out there, try to make a difference, and see what sticks. Tupac Shakur wrote a poem once about the rose that came up through, that grows through the sidewalk. I think Jesus would be happy that that rose seed fell into that sidewalk and was able to grow up so that young man could have that kind of hope. Throw it out there. See what sticks. See what happens. Mulch it. Care for it. You know, we never know what the harvest will be. But at least try. I was amazed. I wrote a grant not long ago for the garden, and I was amazed that since we started the garden, we have supported over 170 agencies in need. Now remember, we share in a special giving program, 10% program. Every 2 months we give to an agency that is oftentimes overlooked, a non-for-profit that is oftentimes overlooked in the world. Our current 10% giving is Buckner's Place. Lori Buckner is the founder of Buckner's Place. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and we're going to go ahead and share in that incredible place. Buckner's Place is a facility for people who are making the transition into life after challenges with either incarceration and mental illness or hospitalization and mental illness. And we're excited about our ability to help them out. She is one of the over 170 organizations that we have helped in our 20 years. Now, the interesting thing about this is that we have thrown seeds out there in 170 different directions, and I've got to tell you, we really ultimately do not know what the harvest will be, do we? We don't know exactly what it'll be. And I think it's important for us to be mindful of that when we live in a world today where we're often counting the harvest before it's been planted, where we're counting what we have and what we need. I think it's important for us to be mindful to put it out there and see what happens. The garden has planted a few things over the last few weeks that we want to talk to you about, because the only way it's going to make a difference is if you use it. We have worked hard. In fact, Amy Stark worked very hard to ensure that we have a new website. TheGardenOnline.org has been totally redesigned. It's been redesigned in a manner that will help you connect with community, connect with one another. The blogs on the website will be your faith journeys. We're starting first with our friend Andy and his experience. If you go in today, you can read a little bit about what his understanding of God. We're going to ask you to get involved in those posts as well, to share in a blog about what your faith journey has brought to you. It's also a website that will help you connect to the different activities and things that are going on in the garden. It'll help you easily connect to Facebook and to Twitter. We are also experimenting these days with a couple of different resources in recording our services. The word evangelism is not one that has ever been shared in the garden, I bet, from this space ever before. But it's important to let people know that the garden, a place of loving acceptance, is here and is here for all people. Perhaps you don't feel comfortable inviting somebody, even though the donuts and the bagels are amazing. But you can invite them to watch. Invite them to watch, and we have 2 different avenues to do that. Periscope up here, Facebook Live down here. Just give it a try. Tell them to give it a try, and then tell them about the bagels and the donuts, and maybe you'll get them through the door. We're excited about those 2 possibilities and what that brings to us in getting messages out. Finally, as we prepare to become our own congregation on July 1st, we're starting a process called the Garden Registry. You know, traditionally, the garden has not had a membership process. But in order to be a 501c3 and to be a church, we have to somehow find a way to share your presence here. And so what we've developed is something called the Garden Registry. So over the next couple of weeks, the Garden Registry, a letter will either come to your home or you'll find one here, and you can determine how it is that you wish to be part of the garden community, how you wish to be recognized. What we're trying to do is create a community of people who will someday be able to speak into the experiences of the garden as a church, as a United Methodist Church. And if you want to do that, then there'll be a box for you to do that as well. The Garden Registry is another thing that's been planted. I love this quote from first century Greek poet Ovid. "Take rest. A field that has rested gives a bountiful crop." Now here I'm talking about all of the things that have been going on in the garden and how exciting it is. But we all know that a field must rest periodically to gain the nutrients and what it needs to live and to produce a good soil. You may be here today and your seed bag might be empty or near empty, and you might be overwhelmed. I want to encourage you to pause and rest your field for a little while. Stop taking from what's not there and simply be still and let the Spirit nourish you in new and different ways. One of those ways could very well be just going and putting some plants in the ground today or some seeds. Just an opportunity to get in touch with nature again. So if you're in that place, I want to encourage you. And I want to encourage you to be in communication with me so I can be praying for you as you are seeking that nourishment you need so that God can work through you to make a difference in the world. For the garden itself, our field rested. We had a wonderful retirement for Lyndon. We've had a wonderful 6 months, and now it's time for us to get some things planted. God has something great in store for this community, and the only way we're going to find out what it is to throw it out there and see what happens. To sow some seeds of love, and I don't care if it's a rocky path or it's a dry path or it's a sidewalk with a crack in it. Just get out there and give it a go. Sow what? Sow it all. Sow everywhere. Sow as God has called you to. Amen.